not necessarily bad, but there's just a certain level of cringe. Hi guys, welcome back to another Nerd Rants video. Today we're going to be talking about the Dragonheart movies. I watched the first one when I was like 12 or 13. It was a while ago. And I didn't realize that there were 4 other movies connected to it. Granted, like 2 of them weren't even out yet, but I had no clue that this was a series. So I was pleasantly surprised when I found the box set at Walmart and was like, what? Wait? And then eventually have finally gotten around to watching all of them. They're really solid fantasy movies. They're actually really good. I enjoyed all of them. They're not exactly like integrally connected. There's no real reoccurring characters. There's lots of references, and obviously the lore is the same, but every movie has a new cast of characters, and so there's none that stick around for more than a movie, because within the world, these movies are happening decades, maybe even centuries apart. Like, nothing happens within the same time period. The only character that shows up for more than one movie is one of the dragons, because dragons live very long. But yeah, they're really solid movies. They all have, despite them not being super integrally connected, they do have the same like vibe, I guess. They all share the right feel and the mood of the original. They're all just subtly different and are made their own, but at the heart of it, it's that same mood and that same feel, and so they, despite not being connected with the characters, they're connected through the lore and through the feel of the movies. So it's actually really cool. The first movie is the one I've watched. I've watched this one more than once. It's I don't remember all the actors' names, and I also can't remember what he's in off the top of my head that people would know, but he's a fairly big name actor, and he's playing a knight who serves and trains this little brat of a prince. Like, he's just about everything that's wrong with humanity. We'll just say that. And yet, this knight still has hope that he could be a better person than his father is. Anyway, Prince gets stabbed in the heart by a metal spike. He just gets shoved into this metal spike that's supposed to be defensive, is put up as a defense for the village that his father is attacking. He's not supposed to be on the battlefield, but here he is. Gets gored on this thing, is dying, so they take him to the last living dragon. Well, not the last living dragon. One of the few remaining dragons that still live. Because in this world, dragons have the ability to share their heart with a dying human and save their lives. And that forges a bond between the dragon and the human. And if the dragon dies, the human will die. If the human dies, the dragon will die. They have kind of an empathic bond. If so, they feel each other's pain and they can kind of sense each other. It's a very cool magic system and very unique and something I'd never seen before. Just part of the reason I was so intrigued by this movie, and all of them actually. So they convince the dragon to share his heart with this little brat. Wonderful idea. And of course, the prince grows up and becomes king and is just an absolute douchebag and just sucks. And so then they have to stop him, and oh, it's so great. I just love it. And then the knight and this dragon that shared his heart with the prince I can't remember the prince's name at the moment. The knight's name is Bowen, the dragon's name is Draco, and I cannot remember the prince's name right now. But I'm pretty sure he's played by Remus Lupin's actor. He's also Ares in Wonder Woman. I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering correctly, it is the same actor. So, Bowen and Draco. Bowen has gone off because I failed the prince, so now I'm going to go off. I don't agree with what he's doing. I'm going to serve myself. And so he's fighting. He's basically becomes a dragon slayer and a bounty hunter. And that's how he's making his living. And so he meets Draco, the last dragon in existence, because the rest have been hunted to extinction. And he's like, if you kill me, you're out of business and you have no living anymore. So they make a deal. And so Draco will go terrorize a village, Bowen will come and kill him, and then they meet back later after he's been paid. And then he never goes out of business because there's always one dragon. And that whole dynamic is kind of hilarious on its own. But it's such a good movie. It has its fun parts in the middle with their little team up. And as it gets to the end and gets more serious because they're fighting the prince with the villagers that have been rising up against him. And we have this battle, and the prince's mother turns against him. And it's just so good. And then Draco, because he shares a heart with the prince, has to give up his life to save the rest of the kingdom. And it's so great. Also, another really cool thing, the constellation Draco, which is the dragon, in this world, the stars that make up that constellation are the souls of dragons who fulfilled their oath to protect and serve humanity. And so we have a really cool scene after Draco dies of him basically disintegrating into glitter and then going up into the sky and becoming a star. And it's just the music for that scene is so good. And because they knew it. They knew it was good because that theme plays in every single movie. Perhaps tweaked a little bit to fit the style or the mood a little bit more because they're all subtly different, but it's still recognizable. It's still the same theme. So they know they had a really good sound instrumental for that scene. It was so good. But yeah, the first one is just classic, and we have Bowen, who they have Knights of the Old Code, and the Old Code being kind of a line. Oh gosh, I can almost recite it. It's a knight is sworn to valor. His something about virtue. His mouth speaks only truth. His might. His sword defends the helpless. Something along those lines. It almost. Anyway, Bowen starts out being like, I'm a knight of the Old Code. I'll teach the prince to the Old Code. When the prince goes all bad, he's like, oh crap, wow. Now I need to look out for number one, and kind of abandons the code. And so we also have his arc of rediscovering that and who he truly is and turning back to the Old Code. And it's also a very cool aspect of the story. So yeah, there's like 3 main parts of the lore that hold true throughout these movies. It's the concept of a dragon sharing his heart, hence the name of the series, Dragonheart, and then Draco being essentially Dragon Heaven, and then the Old Code. Those are the 3 things that stick stay true throughout all 5 of these movies. The first one came out in like the 90s. And then, yeah, I think. And the second one came out in like 2000 or something, only like a couple of years later. And so the CGI quality is about the same. So Draco and the dragon in the second movie are about the same level of cringy CGI. Like, it's not bad. It's just like I don't know how to describe it. It's just like 90s CGI, I guess, where it's not necessarily bad. Like, for that time, it was probably pretty good. But just comparing it to what we have now, it's just, I don't know. There's a certain level of cringe to it. Not necessarily bad, but there's just a certain level of cringe. But the second movie, this is decades later. Bowen has died. But before he died, we have a little prologue, I guess. It explains that he found a dragon's egg in Draco's lair. This dragon's egg was entrusted to a monastery because there's a monk in the first one who's kind of Bowen's best friend. It makes sense. So it's entrusted to, I guess, Brother Gilbert, who is the monk from the first movie, and so it's taken to his monastery, and they take care of it until it hatches. And then 20 years after, and then thereafter, and they keep him hidden because there is a prophecy about a dragon heart being used to destroy the world during a blood moon, I think? Either a blood moon or an eclipse. I think it's a blood moon, though. Anyway, so 20 years, they have this dragon growing up underground. And then we have a stable boy who finds him. The stable boy is Jeff. It's Geoff, and they pronounce it Joff. That's how they pronounce it. His name is Joff, and the dragon in this one is Drake. And then I can't remember the main monk kid in this. They have like a monk apprentice that shows up, but I do not remember his name. It starts with an M. Anyway, so the monks are trying to stop this prophecy by locking Drake under the monastery because he's the only dragon left, so it has to be his heart. And then, meanwhile, we have people from the east, Leon and Master Quan. They come from the east looking for this dragon because they've heard rumors and like, this is the dragon of the prophecy. We need to make sure that he is pure of heart so that we know he will not cause the destruction of the world, essentially. And so they come looking for Drake. And then also, meanwhile, we have a knight becomes the chief advisor to an obviously ailing king whose mind's starting to go. So we've all that happening. Joff finds Drake and goes, why are you locked up? And tries to convince him to get out of the cave and come to the outside world. That eventually happens and he gets discovered. And so Osric, who is the knight serving as advisor to the king, goes, oh, dragon! We remember what it was like when Draco and Bowen, in Draco and Bowen's time, he can serve as protector of the kingdom. Meanwhile, and then during all this, we start to see Osric is just trying to seize power. He starts segregating people based with colored tunics and whatever, and raising taxes and punishing people for not wearing their side colors. And we start seeing that he is obviously just trying to get to Drake. And then we have Joff, who desperately wants to be a knight. And so Osric is manipulating Joff to get to Drake. And Joff is so desperate that he's just blind to it. Until Osric tries to play him for a fool and get Drake to share his heart with him. And then he's like, hang on a second, something's not right. You totally are trying to play us. Lots of things happen. So many. Like, Leon and Quan get captured at some point. The monk guy finds out that Osric is a villain and gets poisoned to just basically go crazy a little bit, because Osric is poisoning the king to make him senile so that it's easier to overthrow. And so he gives the same potion to the monks that he can't say anything because he's found out too much. And then he gets Leon and Quan because he sees them as an obstacle to getting Drake, because they're trying to protect him because they found out he's pure, because they tested him to prove his purity, and he passed. So everyone's getting captured, everyone's getting double-crossed, lots of things are happening. And then Drake and Joff show up again at the castle. I had to confront Osric, I guess. Leon and Quan have escaped because Leon's been posing as a boy this whole time, and so she uses her true identity as a girl to dupe a guard and get out. And then they find out Osric is actually an evil dragon who turned on his vow to serve humanity. So the other dragons stole his heart, which cursed him into human form, and they hid his heart, and now it's a medallion thing, which is apparently what Leon and Quan used to test Drake. And so they unintentionally give Griffin, Osric, who's as a dragon who's owns Griffin, they accidentally give Osric his heart back so he can return to dragon form. And then he and Drake fight it out. And obviously Drake wins. Joff gets caught in the crossfire and is dying, so Drake shares his heart, and then they live happily ever after as brothers, I guess, sort of. It's very fun, and again, very similar in feel to the first one. The second one probably more so than the other ones is probably much closer in vibe and feel and whatever else, and similarities to it. One, because it's happening in the world more recently after Bowen and Draco, but also just because it was also made only like 3 or something years after versus the other ones, which I'll explain in a minute. But yeah, I really like Joff and Drake's relationship, and Leon and Quan are really cool. Osric is an interesting villain, and showing the concept of if you just steal a dragon's heart, it doesn't necessarily kill them if you do it right. It just traps them in human form. So that's a very cool concept of the lore that doesn't really get explored anymore, but honestly didn't really have to. It was just a cool thing that they added in there. It's like, this is possible, but doesn't need to be addressed any more than in one movie about it. So yeah, the second one was very good. The third one, that one was made 15 years after the second one. So needless to say, the CGI quality spiked dramatically. The dragon in this one is Drago, and yes, he looks a lot more realistic than Drake and Draco. Because this one was like 2018 or something. So yeah, 15 years after the second movie, they made this one. And honestly, considering the amount of time in between, it was still done really well, and it still held true to the feel and the vibe and the mood and the lore and all that of the original two. But this is where they get a little bit more integrally connected. The last three are a little bit more, I don't know. They're connected a little bit more because I think they happen over a shorter amount of, well, I don't know about a shorter amount of time. I don't know. They're just closer together and they reference each other a little bit more because all three were made together. So they reference the first two a little bit less and they reference each other a lot more. And it's similar with the first two. Like the second one references the first one quite a bit. And then once we skip and get into the last three, they don't reference Bowen and Draco as much, or Joff and Drake, but they reference each other quite a bit. Anyway, not sure if that made any sense. Okay, so the third one, we get Gareth, who is a squire trying very, very hard to be a knight. Like, he came off the streets and has worked super, super hard for this. But knights are just douches now. There's no honor and they don't follow and the old code has been forgotten and written off as a wives' tale, as have dragons. By everyone except the druids, because we have like Celts and stuff in this as well, and it's an impending war, and there's this war going on between the British, I guess. I don't know what we call them. They just call them Southerners. But they're just British. Anyway, them and the Celts. And they built a wall. Because that solves all the problems, right? So the druids of the Celts, they believe that something is coming. And it could be a weapon that could give them the upper hand in this war. One druid in particular is like, yeah, no, I'm power hungry. If you don't agree with me, so I'm gonna use these shady allies that I made to just wipe out the rest of the druids. Except the one apprentice that gets away, because we need a spiritualist character in every single movie. Actually, I don't think we have a spiritualist character in the third and the fourth. Excuse me, the fourth and the fifth. Anyway, the spiritualist character in this movie is an apprentice druid. So he wipes out all the druids. A meteorite, I guess, falls from the sky, carrying a dragon and 9 dragon eggs. So basically, all the dragons have died out, and this is something or other, resparking the population of dragons. Joff here is been disgraced at this point because he was merciful. And so he's been stripped of his title and thrown in disgrace to live on the streets. A couple reaches out to him to give him a roof over his head for the night, and he hears a tale about things, falling stars having gold. And his knight, or whatever that he was under, said, if you can pay me a crap ton of money, I will make you a knight. And so he's like, oh, cool, gold. I can get my knighthood. And so he goes out looking for this meteorite, finds a dragon instead, saves an egg, one of the eggs, and gets wounded in one of the eggs, which do have gold on them, which is why he saved them. He gets wounded in the process, and the dragon goes, oh, you saved my egg and are dying, so you valued the egg over your own life. I'm going to share my heart with you. Saves him. And then they have to go on a quest because the eggs get stolen and the dragon gets cursed. So he's a ghost during the day, which is cool when you see him in his ghosty form. And he's only able to be used at night. But the curse is spreading, and once it spreads completely, he'll be under the sole remaining druid, this evil druid's control. For convenience sake, the evil druid is named Brood. So I don't have to keep saying evil druid. So, Gareth is going on a quest to find the eggs because he needs the gold to pay off his debts to the knight and get his knighthood. And we have the apprentice druid joins them, and so does a Celt woman. I don't remember her name either. But anyway, we have the three of them, and at night they have the dragon. So they have to save the eggs. And then they're like, okay, we got the eggs, now where do we go with them? Gareth convinces them to go back to his city, to the wall. Because, again, this whole time he's planning on using the gold from the dragon eggs to buy his knighthood. And so they're traveling back, trying to figure out how to break the curse on Drago, who's the dragon in this one. And lots of fun things. There's a final battle. Gareth gets a redemption arc and realizes the old code because of his bond with Drago. He starts to get that. He learns it and starts to feel it more. And so he becomes a knight of the old code. And then they stop Brood, retake the city, and then Gareth and Celt Lady, because obviously she's a love interest. They become king and queen. They're very simple plot. They're actually very, very good. Anyway, the fourth one, we follow Drago is again reoccurring. The only reoccurring character. I guess you can count Gareth because he dies in the first scene of this one. But not exactly. Like, the actor himself doesn't come back, and Gareth doesn't do anything. He's just an old man lying in a bed, and you watch him take his last breath, expecting Drago to die, but he doesn't, because he's bonded to someone else. And he doesn't feel this bond because it's weaker because it's weaker, he doesn't feel it until Gareth dies. And then he's like, how is this possible? How am I connected to someone else? I can only share my heart once. And so he goes out looking for it, finds a boy with the strength of like 3 men, and scales on his spine. Turns out it's Gareth's grandson, because he had a son with Celt Lady who passed away later, and then his son, the prince, went, nope, I don't want this life. I don't like dragons. Dragons are the reason my mother is dead. Runs away, gets married, has kids. This is one of them. So the boy, Edric, returns to the kingdom to take the crown. But he hates dragons because his father taught him to hate dragons. And, the scales on his back and whatever, and all of his troubles that were whatever came from dragons. And so he's leading the kingdom, and then this army of Norsemen show up. And so he goes out with all of his arrogance and hubris and whatever, challenges their leader to single combat. Turns out their leader is his twin sister, who has scales on her face, and because of that, she was tormented her whole childhood, because he could hide his scales, she couldn't. And there's a whole lot of family drama. She can control fire! Fun times. He tries to have peace talks, but she's not having it. She wants the crown because she was born a minute before him. So technically, she's the firstborn, and therefore she should have the crown. He's an arrogant little brat and goes, nope! And war happens! Steals Drago's heart fire, which is the source of their fire breath. And so throughout this whole movie, Drago does not have any fire breath. He's just like, oh, I am now just a giant flying lizard. I mean, still a threat, but, less so. Doesn't have as a long-range weapon anymore. And so now they're fighting to get the Heartfire back, because not only does it take away Drago's fire breathing, it also is slowly killing him. And so now they're fighting to get the Heartfire back from her. Meanwhile, the Norsemen are turning their backs on... I can't remember her name, the twin sister's name. Anyway, the Norsemen are turning on her and going, okay, we want the Heartfire, because we don't want to deal with her, but the Heartfire can still be used as a weapon for us. And so... battle. And Drago dies saving his Edric's twin sister using the Heartfire. And they get turned back to normal and yay, happily ever after. I'm like spoiling, but also so vaguely that you could probably still watch the movies and be entertained. I feel like they're actually fairly predictable movies in a bit, so like, I don't know. Sorry for spoilers, but also if you watch the movies, you'd probably guess quite a few of them. Anyway, the last movie doesn't happen in Britannia, which is where the rest of these have happened. Like I said, it's just straight up Britain, but with dragons. So, in this one, I don't know technically what region this takes place in. It's mainland England, it's mainland Europe, so it could be France. No one has like a distinctive accent, so I can't necessarily place what region it's supposed to be. We can say France, sure. Anyway, it explains Drago raised the remaining eggs because one or two of them were lost in the third one. But Drago raises the rest of the dragons, and so when they come of age, they spread out so they can help other kingdoms. And one of the girls goes to this whatever place we're taking place in now. But she gets disgraced because the king feels betrayed by her. And so she goes off into hiding and is now essentially a hermit dragon. A vegan hermit dragon. It was a very random detail. Didn't really add anything to the story, so whatever. Vegan dragon. Yes, we follow a farm boy. His family gets slaughtered. This one's very dark, actually. We watch 4 mercenaries, I guess you could call them, with animal themes. They massacre his parents and burn down his farm. And he survives. They don't know he exists. So he survives in hiding, and here's what they plan to do. And then they separate to recruit and regroup and make plans. And he's going, you brutally murdered my parents. You burned down my house. I am coming after you as soon as I find someone to help me. Because I'm a farm boy, not a swordsman. Goes to the main city, which is where this king that disgraced the dragon is. Can't really find any help. Tries to hire a sword, but that doesn't work out. Despite the efforts of... I should remember their names. This is the last one I watched, and I can't remember their names right now. Lucas is the boy. I don't remember the dragon's name. Hers is a little bit weirder. I don't remember her name. I just remember she's a girl dragon. Vegan and does more ice breath than anything. Who's the guy's name? One of the random swordsmen. He offers his help and says, I'm the best for the job. These guys are gonna cheat you out of your money. But tavern brawl breaks out, and just a bunch of guys get arrested. Yay. So, Lucas goes to the dragon for help. She goes, no, you're going after vengeance. I'm not gonna help you. He runs off, meets a horse, and goes, cool. I guess I'm gonna have good luck. And I'm going, you're not gonna ask where this horse came from? Okay. Meets up with the swordsman again. Feel really bad that I can't remember his name. It's a little annoying. Anyway. So they're going on a quest for vengeance. As they reach the first guy, because it's a wolf, a bear, a serpent, and a scorpion. Serpent is a girl. They're going after the bear. The rest of them are guys. They go after the bear because the swordsman knows where he is to recruit people for new missions. Yay. And they find out Lucas's horse is actually the dragon shapeshifted into an animal. They add a little bit of lore in this one because dragons in the previous movies have been shown to be able to camouflage themselves as rocks or whatever else. All of the previous dragons have been guys, so it works. In this one they say, okay, the guys can disguise themselves as terrain, the girls can disguise themselves as animals, which could make sense, I guess, because gender is different, the sexes are biologically different, so it works. It makes enough sense. And so she can shift into animals, and so she was a horse. So she really is trying to help Lucas, but not by actually getting the vengeance, by trying to convince him that vengeance isn't the answer. They end up killing the bear by accident because he's like beating the crap out of Lucas, tries to like throw him with his belt, and it's a little weird. It's a little bit funny to watch, but he's like spinning him. Lucas's belt breaks and he falls, and bear falls off a cliff. One down. By accident. The dragon and the swordsman are very much at odds throughout the whole movie. And so they separate. He's like the swordsman's constantly going, you have to choose the dragon or me, the dragon or me. I'm not going to work with her. Come to find out, the dragon and the swordsman have a shared heart. And yay. From like when the guy was a kid, because he got into a car accident or a wagon accident, whatever, almost died. She saved his life. And so they've been bonded since his childhood. And then he goes like, oh cool, we're bonded. It means you can help me get vengeance on this guy that ran my parents off the road. And she goes, no, vengeance isn't the answer. And he just gets all mad and goes and tries to do it anyway. But fails. And so now he doesn't like the dragon. But they're bonded, so he's kind of stuck with her in his life to some extent. But yeah. Find out the king is just a jerk and he's behind pretty much everything that's happening. And so then they have to take down the king by proving that he's a douche and that the dragon didn't betray him, but he was just awful. Fun times. And yay, happy ending. Lucas gets the girl. All that fun stuff. And gets to live on his farm again. Yeah, and it also has a found family with the dragon and the swordsman. Just fun times. Yeah. I think that's about it. Like I said, they're really simple plots, honestly, but they're super enjoyable, and they're just great fantasy movies, especially if you love dragons, which I do. I absolutely adore dragons, so They're like my favorite fantasy creature, and so any movie with dragons, pretty much, I'm for it. Unless the movie's absolute crap. I haven't come across a super crappy movie about dragons yet. But there's also so many movies out there that I haven't watched, so. Yeah, these are great movies. The weakest one might be the fourth one. It had some interesting concepts in it, and it built on the lore of, oh, what happens when a Dragonheart has a child, and is that inherited or whatever else. But just overall, it was probably the weakest of the 5. Just as far as how likable the characters were, what the plot was, I guess. It was probably, yeah, just kind of the weakest of all 5 of them. It wasn't bad, it just, the other ones were better. Like, all the characters in the other ones were much more likable, I feel like. Because both of the twins in that movie are kind of just crappy people. They're kind of just crappy people. Because Edric's just an arrogant little brat. And, I mean, I get it. I get it with the sister and being mocked and beaten and called a witch your entire life. I get it. Why you would go kind of evil. But the fact the only reason you're kind of evil is that you don't like your brother for sending you away by yourself to protect you is a little bit dumb. Like, that, why is that the only reason you're a villain? You have been tormented your entire life and called a witch and a monster, and you got blamed for killing your father, and your brother sending you off on your own is what made you a villain and got resolved when you fixed that relationship? I don't know. Is a little bit weak. Just a little bit weak. But they were all very good. And I love them all. And now I need to get them all. Yeah, very enjoyable. I highly recommend. They're so good. Especially if you just want a nice, solid fantasy movie to watch. They're always... Dragons are... You can't really go wrong with dragons, really. Dragons are just great. But anyway, yeah, those are my thoughts on Dragonheart movies. Feel free to drop your thoughts in the comments or any recommendations you have for another video. I post excuse me. I post videos every Wednesday and Friday, and I'll see, or not. I can talk. I know my schedule, guys. I swear. I post videos every Wednesday and Saturday. I'll see you all next time.